The break, Diana told us about how Canadian soldiers with PTSD were sometimes redeployed into combat. Some defend that as a way to help them tackle their demons. Now, with thousands of soldiers returning to North America from both Afghanistan and Iraq, there is a real effort to find more effective treatments. And some are specifically aimed at a younger generation with hidden wounds of war. Here's Diana again.
John Fraser served in Iraq. What he experienced left him with trauma called post-traumatic stress disorder. What he's demonstrating is the leading edge in therapy for returning U.S. soldiers diagnosed with PTSD.
There'll be an insurgent coming out of this palm grove shortly.
The precise details of what a soldier remembers about the incident that haunts them is programmed into the video. What the road looked like, where the sun was in the sky that day, what happened to the soldier sitting next to them. The base shakes with every explosion. Even smells like burning diesel can be added to make it more real. This is called virtual reality therapy.
Now I'm going to populate the roadway up ahead with a lot of debris.
University of Southern California professor Dr. Skip Rizzo has helped pioneer virtual reality therapy, often simply called VR.
When people first hear about exposure therapy, they kind of get a little anxious. They think, why would you want to make somebody go back and revisit the events in which they were traumatized? But the research shows pretty consistently over the years that by having the person gradually imagine or be exposed in VR to events in their traumatic memories, that they're able to process emotional memories in a way that they might not ordinarily do in everyday life.
By walking the patient through the scene over and over again, it can help them get past the panic and potentially past any lingering guilt. And it seems to be working, with a generation of soldiers more comfortable with a video game than a psychiatrist's couch.
There we go. How you doing?
Good.
Although it's still relatively new, virtual reality therapy is already being widely used to treat PTSD in returning soldiers in the United States. It's been rolled out across nearly 50 hospitals, including the Naval Medical Center here in San Diego. Jason Skinner is one of those soldiers. When he came home from Iraq, his mind was still in combat.
I was still amped up, still on guard, crowds. There was no way I was going in a crowd. Anytime you're walking down the street or driving in a car and somebody just glances over at you, I would become suspicious of that person. I would wonder, what are they trying to do? If we went to a restaurant and they would take us over to a table, it would have to be in a corner where I could see all exits. Everything around me was controlled. I had to control that environment.
By the time he was hospitalized with a breakdown, Jason Skinner weighed only 113 pounds. He hadn't slept more than 3 hours at a time in years. He's never talked publicly before about what he went through, but he wants other soldiers to know he believes VR therapy is what saved him.
Right from the beginning, you think this is a video game. Why am I doing this? This is dumb. You do kind of feel like you're back there. And there's times where you feel like it couldn't get any more real than that. And you went from just sitting here with you, not doing anything, to a huge heart rate, breathing hard and sweating in an instant. And by recognizing that and being coached with it, by watching through the virtual reality, by participating in that virtual world and those actions going on in there, you can calm yourself down, start learning how to deal with it, how to know that it's there, that it's coming, but there's no reason to get excited over it. Everything's normal. You're in a safe place.
It didn't make a whole lot of sense to me when I first heard about it.
Dr. Robert McClay is head of mental health services at San Diego's Naval Medical Center. He says he couldn't argue with the results. 75% of soldiers showed significant improvement.
I'm a scientist. If someone comes with some starting data that shows that something might be better than what we're doing, always willing to give it a shot, and we got some pretty good results with it. So we've been pushing forward in that direction.
Sure, my son would be better at this than I am.
To get a sense of it, I give it a try. The headset is heavy, and at first it seems too cumbersome for anyone to really forget this is a video game.
Oh, wow.
All right, drive around it and speed up. Push.
But after a couple of minutes, I can feel myself getting anxious. And suddenly, it's not so hard to imagine how powerful this could be for someone in therapy.
How's your passenger doing?
Not good. I can feel my own anxiety rising because you do just want to get out of here. How can you tell, Skip, when someone's had enough?
We've yet to have a critical incident where somebody might have yanked off the headset and ran out the door.
Right.
It's like an active engagement. Nothing gets sprung on people like what I just did to you, or I just made a bunch of stuff happen.
Right.
That would never happen in a therapy session.
It's expected thousands of soldiers on both sides of the border will be diagnosed with PTSD over the next few years, and the rush is on to figure out how to treat them. So you might think the early success of the therapy, or the U.S. military's reaction to it, would have Canada doing the same. But VR therapy isn't being widely used by Canada's military. The head of mental health services for the Canadian Forces, Dr. Rakesh Jetley, says he hasn't seen enough published studies to convince him it works.
We have responsibility to our soldiers and to the taxpayers to provide evidence-based best practices, things that are sort of, published in peer-reviewed journals that have multiple studies that show there's benefit to it.
So for the moment, Canada is sticking with traditional exposure therapy, where a soldier talks about the experience over and over to get comfortable with it. But Canada has invested in this. It's called Karen, meant to help soldiers work on their balance when they get used to a new prosthesis. Canada wants to experiment with using it on a small number of PTSD patients as well.
I think the Karen system is an excellent system for what it was designed for, but to apply it for PTSD exposure therapy, it's like killing an ant with a sledgehammer.
That's because Karen isn't just more elaborate, it's massively more expensive. At over $1 million apiece, Canada's only been able to buy 2 of them, and it's sharing them with civilian hospitals in Edmonton and Ottawa. And because it'll be primarily used by amputees, it means relatively few soldiers with PTSD will get to try it. Whereas the VR system is portable and costs about $15,000 a pop.
I'm extremely surprised that they haven't looked at this and said, for the minimal investment, why not just pick up a system and try it out? One thing I want to underscore is we don't sell the software or anything like that. We give that to anybody that can document that they have the qualifications to do exposure therapy effectively. So if somebody from the Canadian military called me up tomorrow and said, can you send me a disc and the spec sheet for the equipment we need, they'd get it in the mail the next day.
Dr. Rizzo says some countries have bought the system and others, like Canada, want to wait for more research. But he believes that's unfair to soldiers suffering right now.
When I hear people say, well, we need more evidence, what, are you going to wait 10 years to do the ultimate 3,000-person randomized control trial, 10 years from now, and then you've got all these people that have been suffering along the way?
Jason Skinner is finally able to talk about the moment that haunted him. A young soldier on the battlefield died as Skinner tried to save him. He says countries looking for proof that VR can work need look no further than him.
It's lying if I said I was 100% cured, because you're never going to be cured. I still have thoughts, I still have bad dreams, that it happens. But it's something that doesn't affect my life anymore. I wake up in the middle of the night now and go, wow, I had a bad dream. Roll over, go back to sleep. It's not a big deal. It's not like it used to be where I'd wake up and I'd stay awake all night long because you didn't want to go back to sleep, because you didn't want to go back to that place.
Although the name is relatively new, PTSD is not. Combat-induced trauma was first identified in returning soldiers during the Roman Empire. Different wars produced different names for it. The Spartans called it the trembler, After the Civil War, it was soldier's heart. Shell shock and combat fatigue came out of the First and Second World Wars. And then there was Vietnam syndrome. The term PTSD emerged out of Bosnia, and it has been used with soldiers returning from Iraq and Afghanistan.